You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, natural resource specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, investmentu.com, U being the letter U. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Janet Yellen looks like she just can't wait to pull the trigger on higher interest rates.
Yeah, I think the market's pretty much through all the stages of grief in accepting that. And so we just saw the U.S. dollar hit, I think, a 12-year high. Will it go up much higher than this? It really depends on the language they have when the Fed makes its announcement. I mean, are they one and done, or are they going to hike some more this year? I have to say that in the U.S. anyway, economic news has been improving. We've seen lower jobless claims. We've seen more jobs created. We've seen higher car sales 3 months in a row. They've been over 18,000. It's just extraordinary. And so there is good news in the U.S. economy. It's the global economy that actually has us all concerned, of course. It just seems to be kind of, shaking its way along in, second gear. So we're really kind of worried about that. But also, we have to remember that the higher the U.S. dollar goes, the harder it is for U.S. companies that sell goods overseas to make profits. This can be certainly bad for, say, apparel companies. It can be bad for industrial machine manufacturers, that kind of thing. It can get harder and harder for them as the U.S. dollar goes higher. So I expect that to be a force in the first quarter of next year. We could see some more of that.
Well, American Apparel went under, and you were saying corporate defaults are soaring.
Yeah, this year globally we've seen corporate defaults go over 100. That's the first time since the Great Recession. We've seen them over 100, and that's more than triple the amount of last year. Obviously, there's a problem there. The problem is that a lot of this is in the oil patch. I mean, we just have to recognize that many of these companies had high debt anyway. When the price of oil and gas turned down, they took on more debt to try and ride it out because, they didn't think it was going to take that long. And now, even though many of them can make money at the wellhead, they just can't service their debt. And so we're seeing a bunch of companies just default. SAE Exploration Holdings, Halcyon Resources, Goodrich Petroleum, that was a big name once, Sandridge Energy. I remember trading Sandridge Energy back in the day. Exco Resources, Vantage Drilling. There's a whole bunch of them that have just gone out of business. Now, this is actually healthy, unless, of course, you happen to be holding those shares. And if you are, then you certainly have my sympathies. But it's good for the industry to clean out those companies that just couldn't really make a go of it anymore. Their fields will be picked up by someone else. I don't think it'll hurt U.S. oil production that much, frankly, because a producing well is a producing well. Someone else is going to buy it and keep it producing. And so we'll have that going on. That said, we should see North American oil production slowly decline between now and midsummer of 2016, probably another 400,000 barrels per day. It's really hard to say. I mean, we're all just guesswork at this point, right? But we have seen North American oil production peak. It's just on the gradual slope downward. However, even as this is happening, we're seeing production from Iraq surge. We see Iran about to bring on a whole bunch of new production, which they will do just as soon as their sanctions lift. Plus, they have a lot of oil. Not all of it is theirs, but there's nearly 100 million barrels of oil in floating storage. That is sitting in oil tankers around the world. Many people are thinking prices can't really go much lower. They'll be able to sell it at higher prices, but some of it, anyway, belongs to Iran, and once those sanctions lift, they're going to push those tankers into ports and try and sell that oil. Of course, they can't all sell that at once. It would be stupid of them to do so, but that will be an extra weight on the market. Right now, the global oil market produces between 1.4 and 1.6 million barrels per day than it can use. That means that extra oil, which is over 1 million barrels per day, has to be stored somewhere. We've certainly seen a lot of it brought off the market in China, and they seem to keep buying it. That's good. But this is problematic. Oh, and also one more thing, just as long as we're on the oil subject, we have to remember it isn't going to be a lot, but the U.S. government is going to make some small sales from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve starting next year, because that was part of the whole budget deal that they worked out. So the world has plenty of oil. This is starting to crush some oil companies which had way too much debt anyway, and so that's why we're seeing a bunch of them just start to really go under. And that's why we've just seen the surge in corporate, defaults. Now, what's going to happen with the price of oil next year? Is there any relief for these companies? My view, and I've been quite vocal about this, is next year, no. We're going to have to wait until 2017. That said, anything can happen, especially in the volatile Middle East, where there is some shooting going on, and where Russia and Turkey seem to be facing off, and we have to remember Russia is an oil power. So, and especially because so many traders have made bearish bets on the oil market right now. We just need a piece of good news to make prices spike the other way. I don't think that spike would last, but you have to be aware this isn't a one-way bet. Things can happen in this market. It's extremely volatile, and so people should be very careful with anything they do in it right now.
A major moneymaker for ISIS is the sale of illegal oil. Turkey apparently is a big customer of it. And then they wonder how come Turkey isn't bombing ISIS?
Yeah, that was a fascinating development because the Russians came out and said, all this oil is going right to Turkey, and the guy who runs Turkey is getting a slice of the action, and that's why they're doing it. And then the U.S. said, well, I guess we could bomb them. Like, what have they been doing for the last year? Why haven't they been bombing those convoys already? Something is weird. Something does not make sense. But now with some Russian prodding, we've started bombing those convoys. And the Russians have taken upon themselves to start bombing the weapons convoys that were coming the other way, disguised as aid convoys. This could be problematic for ISIS. We all certainly hope so. We'll have to see how that works out. But again, this just points to the fact that the Middle East is incredibly volatile. There are oil infrastructure pipelines all over the place. Someone could start dropping bombs in the wrong place. So just be aware that that kind of thing could happen.
Right. And of course, oil doesn't wear a uniform. It's hard to tell.
Right.
Beside its on.
That's the lame excuse that the U.S. gave for not bombing the oil trucks beforehand. They said, well, those were civilians driving those trucks. We didn't want to kill civilians. We wanted to kill ISIS. So that's why we haven't been bombing the trucks. That doesn't make any sense. It's obviously part of the infrastructure that keeps ISIS going. There's really a lot going on there that we aren't really aware of. Now we see U.S. commandos have their boots on the ground. I just hope that everyone's really careful and we don't get to experience yet another swamp in the middle of the desert, and we'll see how that goes.
Also, who is selling all this ammunition to ISIS? We knew they were well armed by the U.S. because they're supposed to be fighting the Syrian government, but they use 1 million rounds of ammunition a month. Who is selling them the ammo?
Well, yes, we were. And also apparently Turkey. So, that's just, and I'm sure we aren't the only ones, right? I mean, I don't know if you've seen the videos of the arms bazaars they have in the Middle East, but you can buy anything. I mean, I'm amazed that the NRA isn't over there selling lifetime memberships, because you can buy anything, and it's just these huge stalls and all this stuff of all kinds of stuff. Why don't they bomb those? There's a question for you. There are really so many unanswered questions about this. This is why I hate to see us really commit to this without any clear idea of what we're doing, who we're fighting, and how we're actually going to judge when we've actually accomplished anything.
This sounds so much like the Vietnam War, where the White House was designating targets that could easily be moved, and instead of going for the most valuable assets, which would be their money-making oil and their weapons and their weapons factories, instead, they started off at priority 100 and worked their way up. That's what they did in Vietnam. It didn't work there. Why would it work here?
I know. Well, we're just going to get our blood pressure rising and the blood pressure of everyone listening to this. So let's move on. We cannot solve the Middle East right now. I can tell you that much.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after the break.
See singing impressionist Andre Philippe Gagnon.
And I think to myself.
In Oliver, December 29th. In Kelowna, December 30th. Buy online and save at ontourtickets.com. Unbelievable harmonies, spectacular performance, the ultimate tribute to the Everly Brothers and Simon and Garfunkel. Bird Dog and the Vintage Electric Band, Saturday, January 9th at the Alex Goulden Hall. Buy online and save at ontourtickets.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking to Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. I know we've expressed concern about the world's economy, Sean, but what's happening with India? I understand that their economy is doing not bad.
Yeah, that's both a good and a bad thing. You saw this big climate summit that they just had, right? Which was in Paris, and one of the problems of climate that maybe doesn't make our press as much as it should is that India is really committed to bringing electricity to a whole bunch of its people that do not have it. And I mean people living in villages where they really have nothing. They have no power. They have no internet. They have no nothing. And so India wants to build electricity plants, some kind of power plants, to actually electrify those areas. And the cheapest thing for them to do is to build them as coal plants. And this is a problem, right? Because if, we really want them not to build those coal plants because that's like a major environmental catastrophe just waiting to happen, then maybe we have to help them out some other way. I'm not sure what the answer is there. I think, we could do some with solar. I know they are building lots of hydro projects and like that kind of thing. And, so their economy is moving along but they are trying to become more self-sufficient, and that means more power, and that means more coal. So that's something to certainly keep your eyes on.
When is the price of gold going to make a major move up?
Oh, God. I don't know. I just find so much more interesting places in the market to be right now. I'm not saying gold is unidirectional. And that's another place where the bets have really gotten one-sided. I mean, amazingly so, with all these hedge funds now betting that the price of gold is going to $1,000 because that seems like the obvious move. It seems like it should draw gold down like a magnet, right? But the thing with the market is when all the bets get one way, you really already should have made that bet, or it becomes kind of late to make the bet. You know what I mean? And sure, gold could go lower. That said, I mean, we've probably seen the same statistics. The sales of coins have just been through the roof, especially here in places like North America. I mean, just buying gold coins, silver coins, you name it. People are buying a lot of them. That's one thing. And also global central banks. They keep adding to their stockpile. So there is demand out there. If anything, it seems to be, we used to see more demand from Wall Street and other money centers around the world, and that doesn't seem to be there anymore. And so we've seen the price of gold, head lower. That said, I know some really nice miners that can make not a great profit, but a decent profit at $800, $900 an ounce. They'll be okay. There are companies that can do well, and at current prices, you can pick them up for a song. So if someone is bargain shopping, now's a good time to be doing it. You just have to be willing to really ride things out because, yes, gold prices could go lower.
How are food prices doing?
Oh, they're okay. I mean, I've seen such fluctuations in that recently. Sugar and stuff like that, which, again, we can blame on India, partly because they're a bunch of sugar fiends like the rest of us. They're joining that little parade of rotten teeth. But also, El Nino will be affecting global agriculture quite a lot, right? I mean, we'll see big swings in places like Brazil and Argentina and India and that kind of thing. So, that's you can probably still get long like pigs. That's still looking like a good market there. And I like beef right about now. But other than that, it's just so volatile. You and I can talk and I'll have an idea, and then 3 days later, this market's going to flip on something. That's the problem with that market. But really, we are talking about the problem with a broad commodity market, aren't we? I mean, hard commodities much worse than the softs right now, but generally there seems to be some overcapacity in the system for all sorts of things. And so this really has to work out. However, we've had 4 years of a bear market in the hard commodities, in the metals, that kind of thing. That can't last forever. I mean, and the lower and lower it goes, the more things get squeezed, the more the fat gets just chipped away, and you can really see a big move in the other direction. What we just need is for the global recovery, because we've seen one in like North America, but globally we haven't. But it just needs to catch fire by maybe another 0.5% of like GDP, and that will really do a lot for global demand, and then you'll really see things flip around.
If you really want to wreck your profits for your company, be involved in a major scandal like Volkswagen. While everybody else says their vehicle sales maybe aren't what they projected, they're still on the positive side. Volkswagen sales are down 25%.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I'm surprising they're selling any at all. I mean, yes, it's a well-made car, but if they're lying about something fundamental about that, what else are they lying about, right? I mean, you just have to wonder. They've really lost the public trust. I think it's a shame. I love Volkswagens. Whenever I get a choice of that as like a rental car, I almost always take it because they're so much fun to drive. But they have some problems. On the other hand, we can say this is very good news for North American auto manufacturers, right? Because Volkswagen's pain is their gain, and so that's good for like Ford and GM and like that kind of thing.
How long is it going to take for these 8 and 9 year car loans to bite the banks?
I was just reading about that. Who makes a car loan for 8 years? That's insane. We are seeing banks get back to the crazy ways, aren't they? And it's not just car loans. There was this article, I couldn't believe it. There was like this bank working out in like Silicon Valley, where of course a lot of people, they have Asperger's or whatever. They're just not good at dealing with people. So, they would have these very strange loans. Like they would have to make a loan to a guy who refused to talk to people. But he wanted to buy a house, but he wouldn't talk to anybody. But they just worked with him on that. But at the same time, they're also loosening up their standards because they figure Silicon Valley, everybody's going to make money, so they'll have no problems paying these things off. That's absolutely the wrong attitude to take. I think, we saw Wall Street crash, like 3 years back. Silicon Valley is going to crash just the same way. It certainly will be different because they do a kind of different thing there, but there's too much unicorn chasing going on in like Silicon Valley. And finally they're going to realize, there's only a few horses and not so many unicorns. And things are not going to go well for like Silicon Valley when people stop shooting fire hoses of money at them. And so I think that actually could happen next year. If you want any kind of prediction from me for like what's going on in 2016, Silicon Valley could be headed for a crash simply because there's just too much craziness there, not only with those actual companies that are creating something out of nothing, but also with the banks, with the other companies that are actually working with them too. And so that's going to be a painful hard landing, and that could come next year, I think.
Yes, and it's going to be very hard for the banks to recover any loan money because they work on ideas. It's pretty hard to seize an idea and sell it off.
How do you repossess an idea? That is not going to work. And yet, if you've ever talked to these guys, and I'm sure you have, they get so excited. They are so excited about what they're doing. It must be great places to work. because everybody runs in there every day and they're having the greatest time, and they really think that they're just changing the world, and like whatever little thing they're working on, almost no one's heard of it, but it's going to be the next big thing. It must be a very, very exciting thing. But when the music stops, that is going to be a very tough place to be.
Sean, anything else you wanted to comment on today?
Not really, except there is an OPEC meeting on Friday, and certainly we're seeing the energy market sell off in advance of that. So much so that, again, everyone might be leaning to one side of the boat. So no matter what happens there, it might be hard for oil to go down if everybody's bearish at that point. So I would keep an eye on that, and certainly you can really find some bargains. So I would tell people just to make their list. There's a good time to go shopping, and it'll probably be coming up soon.
Buy yourself a Christmas treat.
Yes.
Sean, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I'll talk to you later.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, investmentu.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.